Good production.
Burning at the badness. Badness. Gully. Trinidad. A big guns. I that my friends them fire. We burn with that empire. We put them in crossfire. A big guns. With a blood where me make dog for me teach and crow fly down. Up on the wall me go catch with the rifle rat patrol run. Watch the war red a fly through chest and punch at them down. Shut out head side, chop out a tongue. Scary ya fucker so we do it and done. Shoot up the rifle in your ears drum. Black and sanyam them like a breadcrumb. On the perimeter, stand up straight now the scope make me take a picture. 300 degrees at another temperature. Them badness co-sign me killers them sicker. A big guns, that my friends them fire. Mama me born with that empire. I shall put them in crossfire. A big guns, big guns. Not a fuck them don't know about the badness, them don't know bombs. Guns. Big gun. So you know I say a place of it like before police. So shots fire. Every rifle lift up like fire. Yeah, pressy burner, pan a head like giant. Yeah, burn down a pussy house like bonfire. Boss can run down your bottle full of contract killer.
Enemy on me phone.
Suck no matter. Finger play with it, she got take less stamina. Turn up back of the rifle like Excalibur. A big gun. That my friends empire. Me born with that empire. We put them in crossfire. Big guns. A that Guyana fire. A that Jamaica fire. A that dissolve them fire. Pussy try this me from last year. Blind them or them can't hear. Me born figure it out warfare. No mix Rolex with a Cartier. Barbados. Born in the badness. Yeah, badness.
Like, share, subscribe. We're going to get the show started in a moment. You feel me?
Just like that,
Hold on.
I'm gone with the black sheep. Say it every time. Say it every time. Rich and me say it every time. Spend my money upon you, can you find? Girl, you fine. Me put you in the latest, me in my prime. Pussy they are the greatest, girl I know for why. Love it cause you know basic, so you want to shine. Like me in the studio, but you there on my mind. Straight to the top, you know me love you no design. Girl your skin it don't see me when me come in every time. And if a currency me up in every kind. And you born that and nothing for my mind. Girl your pussy worth millions, me have the dollar sign. So the two one we got together, me love it when you ride on. Love it when you ride on. Ride on. Girl you pussy worth millions, me love it every time, girl. That's how me find me, I cannot decline. Bring the riches on your foot, you know the time. Till that do a spot, I want me side. Rich and me say it every time. Spend money for you, can you find? Do your hair and your nail get a ride? No girl can't hotter than you outside. Rich and we say it every time. Spend my money for you, can you find? Can you tie? You can ride. No girl can hotter than you outside. You deserve anything you want, princess, you get the ball. Bring your dreams them to life, pretty girl. Bring it tight, tight to me. You bring it tight, tight to me. Hey, you deserve what a pretty dolly girl, your body full of curve. Regular we quarrel, girl, and you get on my nerves. Love you till the last day, I love you from the first. Couple million not pass, man rich in that tough. Put a bitch in that place, you a star from birth. Bossy girl, I say you walk on earth. Anything you say you want, you heard. Got it for real, everything we do it rich and we say it every time. Spend my money on you, can you find? Go do your hair and your nails, get a ride. No girl can't hotter than you outside. Rich and we say it every time. Spend my money on you, can you find? Go do your hair and your nails, get a ride. No girl can't hotter than you outside. Rich and me say it every time. Spend money on you, can you find? Do your hair and your nail, get a ride. No girl can't hotter than you outside. Rich and we say it every time. Spend my money on you, can you find? Can you tie, you can ride. No girl can't hotter than you outside.
Big up Massacre. And give that another play.
Say it every time. Say it every time. Rich and me say it every time. Spend my money on you, can you find? Girl, you fine. Me put you in the latest, me in my prime. Pussy they are the greatest, girl I know for wine. Love it can you no basic, so you want to shine like me in the studio, but you up on my mind. Straight to the top, you know me love no design. Girl your skin it don't see me when me come in every time. And if a currency me up in every kind. And you born but I nothing for my mind. Girl your pussy worth millions, me have the dollar sign. So the two when we got together, me love it when you ride on. Love it when you ride on. Ride on. Girl your pussy worth millions, me love it every time, girl. That's how we find me, I cannot decline. Bring the riches on your foot, you know the time. Till that do a spot, I want me side. Rich and me say it every time. Spend money on you, can you find? Do your hair and your nail, get a ride. No girl can't hotter than you outside. Rich and we say it every time. Spend my money on you, can you find? Can you tie, you can ride. No girl can't hotter than you outside. You deserve anything you want, princess, you get the ball. Bring your dreams them to life, pretty girl. Bring it tight, tight to me. You bring it tight, tight to me. Hey, you deserve what a pretty dolly girl, your body full of curve. Regular we quarrel, girl, and you get on my nerves. Love you till the last day, I love you from the first. Couple million not pass, man rich in that tough. Put a bitch in that place, you a star from birth. Bossy girl, I say you walk on earth. Anything you say you want, you heard. Got it for real, everything we do it rich and we say it every time. Spend my money on you, can you find? Go do your hair and your nails, get a ride. No girl can't hotter than you outside. Rich and me say it every time. Spend my money on you, can you find? Go do your hair and your nails, get a ride. No girl can't hotter than you outside. Rich and me say it every time. Spend money on you, can you find? Do your hair and your nail, get a ride. No girl can't hotter than you outside. Rich and we say it every time. Spend my money on you, can you find? Can you tie, you can ride. No girl can't hotter than you outside.
All right, we're going to get the show started. All right. Let's begin. How white men have failed society. Hold on. White men, especially those in power over the past 2 centuries, have played a major role in shaping both Western society and its unraveling. Historically, men held nearly all the levers of power in the West, politically, economic, military, media, and religious institutions. So when systems decay or implode, it's not unreasonably to critique those who had control of the system. Now you have to respect white men in with the power that they have amassed and they've gained and they've wielded, right? Um, you have to give them that respect, right? You can't deny their intelligence, you can't deny their capabilities or their abilities because they've been able to dominate the Western world for a long time. So you have to give them that respect, however they got to that position of power, right? What I want black people to recognize and learn is that you have to pay respect to the you have to respect that. You cannot deny that. You got to admit that at some part in the game, you took a L. Feel me? You got to learn from that, right? And the truth is, when it comes to black people in Black America or across the diaspora, I'm no longer going to say African diaspora. I'm going to say diaspora, the American diaspora, right? Black people around the American diaspora, especially here in America, of this tribe, we do need accountability, and that is undeniable. Because black folks at once upon a time, during the 60s, during the 50s, during the early 1900s, the 1920s, even during the 18th century, after slavery, going into the 1800s, black people were fighting and striving to be successful, wanted to participate into the growth of America, wanted to be upright and dignified. You understand? And you understand. So, and where we are right now, we have fallen we have fallen way in the pit from where our forebears and our ancestors were just a couple hundred years ago. You see what I'm saying? Right? But at the same time, we cannot erase the truth or ignore that. At the same time, black folks, we need to hold ourselves accountable for the gang banging and how we treat each other and how we're operating in today's society. Because a lot of the arguments we're not making it from a position that we're in the upright mobile standing and we're upright. We're making it from the position of, we're making it from a, we're making these arguments while at the same time debauchery is going on in our communities, and we're not holding that debauchery accountable. We're not even trying to clean it, right? And well, white people, you purposely allowed the destabilization of black progress, both on the left and the right, who are conservatives. Both sides will not acknowledge their complicity. Well, the conservatives won't acknowledge their complicity or their complicitness in allowing the things that happened to black people, even though they were supposed to protect black people. The left won't acknowledge the damage that they have been doing towards black folks and continue to do to black folks. We can start with the Compromise of 1877, the deal between the Northern Republicans and the Southern Democrats, right? That deal between the Democrats and the Republicans of the North, well, I forgot what president, whose president that was, but it's for a president on the Republican side to gain presidency, right? And what happened was he pulled federal troops from the South, and that abandoned a lot of the newly free black Americans to the terror of Jim Crow for nearly a century, right? That decision alone put black people back 100 years. That 1870 compromise, because remember, the Republicans, they're the ones that helped to free black people, right? And they were supposed to protect black people from the Southern Democrats. And if they had federal backing if they had protection from the federal troops, the Democrats with their Jim Crow would not have been able to do what they did. And that was a deep scar. That was the first scar, right? Then you go into segregation, redlining. You know what I'm saying? When you redline it, right, it's like you're denying people or a segment of people from buying property, renting places, and gaining capital from that property. Because now if I could buy a house or I could buy land, or I could buy this and here, I can now rent these places to other people, other black folks, and I could create that community. Then I could create a capital from that, right? Redlining denied black people from these things, right? And you denied them protection. And black people still went on. Black people still built Wall Street, Rosewood, and dozens of other black towns. But these places were destroyed not by, at that time, black people's dysfunction, black people's, because black people at that time, when they built Rosewood, when they built Black Wall Street, when they had those black towns built, they were not dysfunctional at that time. They wanted to be part of the American space. They wanted to prove themselves to America that they're human beings and they can compete. Yet, when white mobs from the Democratic left, who are KKK, destroyed these cities, America at that time did not hold those white people accountable. Nor did those black people from those places get any reparation from that. They didn't. You know what I'm saying? And all kind of excuses on why that happened, right? And still, black people said, "Now we're gonna fight in the war." They fought in World War One and Two, regardless of the racism and the segregation that happened to black men while serving the military, while serving America, while going to war to risk their lives for a country, to get so that America can then respect them as human beings, respect them as being part of the fabric and the protection of America. And yet, when these black men came home from these wars, PTSD, all kind of mental issues, all kind of mental problems, America still didn't respect them. Still called them nigger, still lynched them, didn't treat them with dignity. These are black men that helped to build infrastructure, not as slaves, but as construction workers, even as slaves, right? Paid taxes, raised families, tried to live with dignity. And black men still don't get the proper respect and the accreditation for when they were disciplined, when they were about traditional values, when they were conservative, when they wanted to be part of America, when they didn't want to compete. White men still did not respect black men for that. Example, Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, he fought in the Olympics. And when he came back home to America, he recognized that he was still treated with disrespect by the white people that he fought to represent. And it wasn't that black people wanted to integrate. It was that at that time, they just wanted their own. Because remember, during that time, they were not allowed to integrate with white people. That was one of the things. Right? So black people said, okay, cool. You don't want us eating from your store. You don't want us going to your hospital. You don't want us even talking to you. We're going to build our own city, our own towns. And they did. And they still got bombed and destroyed. Right? And you didn't give, or white men in power, you didn't give black people the same protection under the Constitution or even respected their human dignity. This is why they had to put the 13th, the 14th, and the Amendment in it. And even after these things was there, white men, you still did not respect black men for that. This is what pushed black men towards socialism, Marxist ideology, right? Because Marxism, it needs an underclass or a downtrodden class to use as a power base to go against whatever is the perceived oppressor. So you ran black people into that Marxist ideology because the system that you white men created, and you didn't allow black men to get the same protection and rights under that Constitution. They believed that they were not part of America, so they ran into Marxist ideology. So you chased them into that, right? And that's the real failure. The real failure is that America did not treat black men as men, not even as citizens. You allowed other groups of people to feel more American. Because remember, at one point in time, Asians were treated like shit. The Jewish communities was treated by crap by white people, but white people acknowledged their humanity. White people allowed them to get protection. You still denied that to black people. And then we're told that to move on from it, or we're exaggerating pain, or we should forget the past, but you respect the shit you've done to other people in the past. And then you have white manosphere guys that come in here on or from the left or the right, well, from the right, and they love talking about Pookie and Ray Ray, right? Which is a low key way to say black dysfunction. Meanwhile, in their community, they got white trailer park trash. You have a white man that will fuck another white man's wife and get her pregnant before a black man will ever touch that nigga. But all you hear the white manosphere talk about is Pookie this and Pookie Ray Ray this and Pookie this. So what I believe is that the reason why now white men are allowing black men to come into their manosphere is to make them into clowns and jokes. This is why I appreciate the Anger Man and O'Shea Duke and Obsidian for creating the black manosphere. Because now black men get our own space to stand on business and dispel a lot of the lies being told about us. Right? See, white men, you can't hold black men accountable when you don't hold your own people accountable yourselves. And that's what brings us to this video today, right? And I'm going to add this back to the stage. White men allowed feminism to grow, initially out of liberalism and enlightenment values. Remember, the devil presents itself as good works and enlightenment. And he used words like enlightenment values, personal freedom and all this other shit. That's how the devil comes to you. And it uses words and it hides behind words that have good intentions. But the actions don't speak to those good intentions, right? Individualism, secular humanism, personal freedom. But instead of putting clear limits on social change to preserve societal cohesion, many white men either supported it ideologically, liberal academics, media moguls, benefited from it materially. More women in the labor force equals more tax revenue or labor competition, or ignored socially, thinking it wouldn't go too far. Right? So let me break down what I mean when I say supported it ideologically, right? They allowed a lot of liberals to be in academics. This is where you had a lot of those talk shows in the 60s and in the 40s and in the 50s and I think around mainly in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s. They allowed these, and they allowed it into your college institutions. They allowed it to become part of the programs and to teach people in these classrooms. This is why when you go into society and hear a lot of white women speak, well, a lot of women in general speak, they speak the way they do. Because a lot of these things were taught to them in high school and on the college campuses. Sexual liberation and these things. When I say they benefited from it materially, the reason why it was so difficult for black men to compete in the job market when it comes to corporate America, right? Because after Bill Clinton's NAFTA agreement and it shipped a lot of those jobs overseas, black men had to adjust and get work in corporate America, right? So they were going to hire white women because, mind you, white women outnumber black men. That's just a fact. Like, they outnumber us. Black women outnumber us too, right? Especially during the 1990s where you had both the crime bill and the Joe Biden's crime bill and the manufacture and NAFTA agreement, right? So these white job places, they're definitely going to hire a white woman over a brother, even though he overqualified or qualified for that position. And they were definitely going to hire your woman before they're going to hire you. The reason being is that they deliberately position your black woman above you to gain capital above you, so that you wouldn't gain capital, so that you can set some kind of patriarchal, to deny you your patriarchal right in your community, right? Because remember, back in the 90s, what was the model of black woman? If you're not making more money than me, I ain't gonna submit to you, all that other bullshit, right? So they deliberately did that. Now, I cannot prove that, right? You can't really prove racism, that's how they were racist with it, because they hide it behind policies, they hide it behind neutral interviewer questions, right? You can maybe make a study and notice a pattern about things and maybe lucky enough if you get a whistleblower to come out and say, hey, this is what this means, this is what that means. But a lot of these things is hard to prove. It really is, right? So it's difficult to get data or statistics because now if you admit that a lot of jobs were doing these racist practices on purpose, it was still like you can no longer blame black men for why they couldn't find work during the 90s and the early 2000s. You'd have to blame the unethical hiring practices of these job and workplaces, right? Another example is in constructions. A lot of these construction companies would hire illegal immigrants or illegal Mexicans because they had cheap labor. They could do things, and if they hurt themselves on the job place, well, they're illegal. You know what I'm saying? They can't sue them. They could have hired plenty of black American men, but they didn't. Who knows? Maybe that could have been on purpose. And mind me, this is about Democrat and liberal left. But anyway, by the time feminism became third wave or postmodern, anti-family, anti-masculine, and gender deconstructive, many white men either neutered by the system or complicit in maintaining it. Right? By the third wave feminism, this was already a damn problem. Third wave feminism is slut walk. Third wave feminism is white women saying that if the baby is a male, I'm going to delete that male baby. Do you know how idiotic that is? And white men still didn't step out and say, hold on, stop. You can't do that. They still went along with it. You even hear liberal white men argue that white women should have their freedom to delete babies. Not in the context that she was raped, not in the context that, some kind of ancestral thing happened in the family, not in the context of, you was with a dude, y'all broke up, and y'all planning to get married, and it did none of those things. Purely on the context that, I got into a situation with a dude, or I went to the sperm bank, or I went on a 3 or 4 phase or hot girl summer, so I'm gonna delete the baby. Deleting the baby based upon immoral things or irresponsibility, not based upon shit, I got raped. That's understandable. Or some kind of bullshit that happened in the family, understandable. But it's not based on that. And white men still allowed it to go down. Either because, remember, women vote. So they pander to women because women outnumber men in general in this country. Women can vote now. They have to pander to a certain base, especially if we're like New York and Cali. That's a big liberal huge liberal basis. Like New York and California are liberal, right? And a lot of those feminist ideas, they fester in New York and California. So they got to pander to those bases to get elected. Not based on what's best for the country, but based on foolishness. Because we all know that if you have women deleting male babies, who are we going to have to lead? Who are you going to have to lead, to have to build the structure that you? Who are you going to have to do the shit that we know women are not going to do at the end of the day? All right. Many white male commentators do critique black communities for chaos, crime, or fatherlessness, without acknowledging how state policy and economic sabotage help to engineer those conditions. For example, I mentioned redlining, right? Redlining and housing discrimination, job market inclusion and union gatekeeping, right? Over policing and mass incarceration, Nixon's war on drugs, Reagan policies, Clinton's 1994 bill, right? You cannot critique black culture when you had these systems in play, when you're deliberately taking through unethical hiring practices and excluding black men from the job market to gain capital, forcing them to have to, after time, we're not excusing black men. I'm not saying it's okay for you to do it now because you got more opportunity now to make a lot of money now. But at that time, you cannot have these things in place. And if you pick up a book called The War on Drugs and Poverty by Elizabeth Hinton, it goes into detail how black community was targeted by police and over police. Meanwhile, you had other communities like the Italians, like the Russians, that were also engaged into criminal activity and selling of drugs and dope. And I would argue that a lot of New York City was built off of dope, drug money. I can't prove that. I really can't prove that, but I would argue that it is, or at least try to, right? Even with conservative or traditionalist white circles, you rarely see serious internal accountability for how white male leadership or its absence contributed to the moral and structural decline of Western society. Instead, there's deflection, blaming immigrants, women, men, women, or globalists without looking at the root failures in their own camp. Conservative, like the way I listen to y'all, right? When you say that, I hear Candace always say this, and a lot of couple white men say this, that black men, y'all are responsible for this, that, and the third in the communities. Well, black men didn't pass the Deadbeat Act. And we look about the fatherless homes, it says that 70% of black men are the most involved or enrolled when it comes to fathers in the household with their children, right? When you talk about wedlock birth, this is why reading comprehension and what you call looking up what words mean or definition of words. Out of wedlock birth, this means you were not married to the mother. It doesn't mean that the father wasn't there, right? And you didn't go into the fact, you could say that, say a woman, she'd get pregnant 10 times. You could say 10 men impregnated her, or you could say 2 men impregnated her. Because 2 men could have had sex with that one chick, and she could have gave 10 babies to those, 5 babies to one dude and 5 babies to the other dude, a piece. That doesn't mean all black men are the reasons why all of these kids are are being sired. And I believe white conservative men know that. I believe they look into that, but they don't address it. They don't go do the actual stats. They're just blurting out surface level things. They don't actually know the black culture, black community. Candace Owens is not married to a black man. She's married to a white dude. Now, that doesn't take away from what she's saying. Not 100%. But it's just on the surface intellectually dishonest, because if you're an intellectual, you would go to see the reason why and then point the finger onto who's allowing these things in these communities. Does that mean that black men should be running around becoming breeding bucks? No. But at the same time, you got to hold black women accountable, because they're opening their legs for these dudes and get pregnant by these dudes. Right? When you have Adam 22, that is a open relationship. This is a white dude. Then when you have corn stars like Riley Reid, or blue movie makers like Riley Reid. Oh, Adam 22, he's a blue movie maker too, right? Riley Reid, she was a white dude, gave her a traditional relationship. Women like Riley Reid should not get a man, period, or relationship, period. So if you white men who are conservatives or liberal, well, more than conservatives, or white people in general, men in general, you cannot critique black men and who type of women we get into situations with, when every time you look up, you see your group of men getting into situations or relationships with either corn stars, or you're into open relationship or sex culture. You can't critique us for that. You got to critique yourself for that. Like, how does Riley Reid still able to get a traditional type of situation, but somehow black men are still the issue? Many of the same white men who romanticize traditional values turn around and glamorize soft-core degeneracy in their own personal lives or media platforms. A lot of you do that. You'll say traditionalism this, traditionalism that, and then you'll lecture Instagram thoughts. You'll lecture Instagram hoes and corn stars on being like you're trying to argue with Bonnie Blue about her being traditional. Trying to turn a 304 into a housewife, like with Riley Reid. And we're going to watch and see how that situation with Riley Reid turns out, right? Hoes should not be getting saved. Black men in the West, and especially in the U.S., have been trying to build with no land, no capital, no institutional trust, and no insulation from attack. Anytime black men created wealth and stability, example Black Wall Street in Tulsa, it was destroyed through racial violence, or legal sabotage. Integration and welfare programs eroded much of the organic patriarchal energy that was growing in post-slavery Black America, right? You destroyed Tulsa, Oklahoma. So look at this, right? Black men tried to create a patriarchal society and power structure of their own. White people destroyed that power structure. Then the liberals with I forget who it is, LBJ, came through with welfare programs. Because if you go back in that timeline, Black community during everybody was struggling, but particularly Black community was fucked up, right? So then now LBJ comes, who's a liberal or on a Democratic, they come up with the welfare state, basically saying that you can't have a father in the household in order to get these government benefits. Same thing with Section 8 and all these other free money programs that the government created. That caused Black women not to turn to their Black men for financial stability, but to turn to the government or the state, which is low-key communism, for their financial stability. White men, you're allowed this. And now Black people became a damn near 100-year power base for the Democrats. And how they become a power base is because, well, if you have 50% of the white people voting Democrat and 50% of white people voting Republican, you need that 13% to tip the scale, right? Now, what the Republican right could have did was protected Black folks from and gave them their protection under the Constitution from white people. And if y'all's going to tell me, well, we would have broken that deal and we would have broken promises, white people, y'all break promises for people every day. You mean tell me you couldn't break a promise to protect the human rights of Black folks during this time? Unlike white men who inherited power, land, capital, and lawmaking influence, Black men have been fighting uphill on a treadmill. They are still held to the same or harsher moral standards. You cannot tell Black people they should be held to the same standards as white people when they're not in the same positions of power. You know what I'm saying? They were not in the positions of power to pass law, to influence law. They did in there now, but the Black folks that are in there now on the left, they're controlled by the left. They look at what's this chick name? Jasmine Crockett or whatever her name is. Yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Look at her behavior. That's not the type of Black people you want in power. That's a congresswoman that's supposed to be representing Black people, right? So that's what that. The fall of Rome is a useful metaphor towards its collapse, right? Masculinity was replaced with decadence, family life eroded, immigration outpaced assimilation, the elites became obsessed with sex, sports, and comfort, right? And the same thing, like white men are like, yo, your failure record, like this is the same thing I repeat. Because you're doing the same shit now, right? Wealthy elite men, Roman men, the same way powerful white men today, run tech, finance, media, academia, and are overseeing a culture implosion they either tolerate or profit from. See, a lot of white men, they profit from a lot of the sex culture, open relationship culture, the decadence that's going on. They profit from that. When you talk about family court, right, and how it's set up, a lot of family court lawyers, judges, what you call bailiffs, their pockets is dependent upon people being in that court, going through either divorce or child support court, right, and going into the hands of the mother while pressing the father, right? We talk about the media and academia. It's a lot of money apparently in these college institutions on pushing Marxism and communistic ideas to your students, basically training grooming the next generation of children that's going to keep causing this mess that we have going on today. So white men, you're tolerating these things. But white men get on these YouTube spaces in these Twitter spaces, and they critique the shit out of black men and what we need to do and our failures. All right. No man or race should ask to be judged by a low standard, and white men who had the authority let it rot. That doesn't absolve individual black men of personal choices, but it does mean the whole narrative of black men failing society is skewed when they never had a fair shot at controlling or shaping it from the top down. So yes, white men do have a lot of cultural cleanup to do, especially if they want to lead, critique others, or restore anything resembling order. You cannot judge black men when we're not allowed to have. It's like sit at the table. It's like with the movie Hoodlum, right? With Bumpy Johnson, right? They did not allow Bumpy Johnson to sit at the table till they found out that he was that nigga, like he was an actual threat. Remember on Dutch had said in that movie, well, when I told you let's make money off of black folks, y'all said y'all didn't want to make money off of nigga pennies. Because remember, Dutch was the only one that capitalized off of making money with black people, right? Then after Bumpy Johnson became an actual threat, an actual power base, then they made him sit at the table. Black men, when it comes to the overall in general, you never allowed us to sit at the table properly. It's either some token nigga, or it's he gotta lick boots, or like a Martin Luther King, because they let Martin Luther King sit at the table, and Martin Luther King, he was basically pushing communism. A lot of y'all don't know that. He's pushing black people to be non-violent at the time, which is basically make them docile. You feel me? So like, all right. Like I said, redlining, right? Denied residents in a predominantly black neighborhoods access to mortgage and capital. Because you can build credit off a mortgage. You know what I'm saying? And then now when you pay off your mortgages now, that house could be left. Like these are the things that a lot of the silent generation and the greatest generation would do. They'd have a house, right? Work, pay off the bills on that house, and they leave that house to their children. Just land and power right there, right? Black veterans who fought in the military face discrimination in receiving benefits, housing, education loans, right? War on drugs, 1970s to the 1990s, led to mass incarcerations of black men, harmed community structure, and generational wealth, right? Now, what happened, and what we're finding out now, is that a lot of black men during that time period who actually didn't do anything. And if you go look up the what you call them people, the Innocence Project, right? The Innocence Project, they go in and they look into a lot of these cases where black men were wrongfully convicted, and they overturn them. Because come to find out, either the police officer planted drugs on them, or the police officer didn't do something correctly, or he purposely did something incorrect, right? So they overturn a lot of those cases, right? These are established facts in American history. Elizabeth Henson's research makes it very clear the policies had disparate outcomes that continue to influence capital access and community development. Right? Conservative and liberal commentators often emphasize family breakdown and violence in black communities without equally scrutinized issues caused or allowed by powerful white men, such as bailout policies, deregulation leading to long-term economic shifts, funding media and academia that advance cultural depictions of debauchery. Conclusion: the pattern of selective critique is valid and noticeable, right? Now, this is the statistics. FBI uniform crime reports. Now, you often hear white people in these spaces talk about how black people commit the most crimes to the whole population and blah, 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 blah. But here go the stats. Y'all can look these up for yourselves. FBI uniform crime reports, 2022. White offenders, 69%. Black offenders, 27%. But context matters. White people make up 60 to 70% of the U.S. population. black people are 12 to 13%. That's in per capita terms. Black offenders are overrepresented for rape arrests, but white perpetuated rapes are more numerous in raw numbers, right? And we're going to break down per capita versus raw numbers in a bit. Molestation by race. 57% of the perpetrators are white. This is from the U.S. Sentencing Commission data. 16% are black. However, other studies, for example, Abel and Harlow, found whose rates align closely with each group share of the general population. In other words, child molesters exist across all races in their population to each group population size. So they said that molesters, that's saying like it's close to what the population size is. So the percentage is close to what their population size is, right? So, when you have black people being 13%, you have white people being 60 to 70%, they're saying that it's going to be close to that population size, right? White offenders, Asian offenders, right? Mind you, this is what in proximity to group, right? In raw numbers, white offenders account for the majority. In per capita terms, black individuals are overrepresented, given population share, but whites still account for more cases in absolute terms. So, in other words, because of white people being a bigger group than black people, in raw numbers, they do it more than us. When it comes into per capita terms now, right, that's going by the group per average person. So I'm saying? But it's being overrepresented. It doesn't give you the raw numbers. It's giving you per capita per average person, right? And I'm going to show you how that's represented, right? So this is going into that. White in raw numbers, right? So that's saying the same thing. White individuals account for the majority of sexual crime arrests and convictions in raw numbers. Black individuals are overrepresented in arrest data compared to their population share, but fall short of white totals when you look at raw figures. Most perpetrators are male across all races. Child sex abuse is statistically dominated by white offenders when looking at convictions and arrests. So why are white people focused on holding black people accountable when they have a lot of debauchery going on in their society, right? Because they're still a bigger group. Even though the percentage is close to the proportion of their bigger group, it's still a big problem in their society. You see what I'm saying? It's a group, white people. However, black also, I keep saying that. See, and systematic disparities. Raw numbers, FBI 2023. So this is recent. White men commit majority of the rape, majority of the sex crimes, majority of the domestic violence arrests, majority of the mass shootings, the majority of white-collar crimes like embezzlement and fraud, right? So when you talk about, if you want to say compare mass shootings to gang banging, or when a black person is, there's a drive-by, because white people are the bigger group, they still contribute to the mass shootings. So there's still more mass shootings going on in their community as compared to black folks in the raw numbers, right? White people are the numerically majority in the U.S., 60 to 70%. So by default, white men will lead in raw accounts of most crimes. Per capita rates. On a per capita basis, black men are overrepresented in certain violent and sexual crimes, but so are Native American men and Latin men in specific categories. Still, white men are not morally absent from these statistics, right? Now, the reason that reason is because we're a smaller group again, right? We're I think the Latin community is an even smaller group, and the Native American men are an even smaller group. You know what I'm saying? White manners for personalities, and often concerted pundits rarely critique white debauchery with the same energy they aim at black men. Instead, they focus on black crime disproportionately, frame issues like fatherlessness, promiscuity, or drug use as black problems, avoiding discussing white involvement in porn production and promotion, a billion-dollar white-dominated industry, mass shootings, white men are vastly overrepresented, sex tourism, serial killers, and incest, while male offenders dominate these stats. or white male offenders dominate these stats. Right? Many of these critiques ignore root causes like, oh, sorry, I'm already going through that. See, I put these slides together and I gather the information and I put them in slides, right? Uh-huh. White biker gangs like Hell's Angels, Aryan Brotherhood, white opioid abuse and fentanyl overdose in rural America, right? So that's drugs in white people communities. High divorce rates, support evasion among white men, the normalize of cuckold, string, and open marriage, culture in suburban and progressive white communities. So we love talking about black male debauchery and promiscuity when a lot of you have that into your culture in both conservative and liberal suburban areas. A lot of them Mormon bitches be cheating, and a lot of them Mormon men be cheating. White men's moral failures, especially when they try to act as if they're the natural standard bearers of order, discipline, and morality. Fact, statistically and culturally, they are not exempt from the same dysfunction they critique. White America created and mainstreamed many of the forces, feminism, porn, divorce culture, Marxist academia, etc., that have weakened traditional family structure, then blame others for the fallout. If you're taking jabs, well, yeah, that's me. Holding a mirror up, right? Now, exit that. Put my face back up there. Here we go. Am I taking jabs at white people? Yes. Because a lot of white people, when they do speak on the black community, they like to use the worst of us to represent the majority. Same thing with black women do to black men, and it's like everybody does it. And then they focus on black community as a problem, and they don't look within themselves as well. Maybe you cause these problems. You're the reason why certain things are happening in your own community, in your own house, and you're the overall majority, and you're the most powerful one in America, right? Let me go and put this on stage. Let me go into the intellectual dishonesty of using per capita. Earlier I said that I was going to break down per capita versus raw numbers. This is how it is, right? A lot of white people in these spaces, they love to use the word per capita. Well, I'm going to start using the word raw numbers because the raw numbers say that you're the ones that commit most of these things because you're the bigger group. Per capita equals per person Latin. It's used to normalize statistics across different population size. The formula is per capita rate equals number of incidents plus population size, or divided population size times 100,000 or another scale, right? Example, comparison by race. White population is 200 million, black population of 40 million. White grape arrests are 10,000, black grape arrests are 4,000. Raw numbers. More white men are arrested per capita. White, 10,000 divided by the 200 million times 100,000 equals 5 per 100K. Black, 4,000 divided by 40 million times 100,000 equals 10,000 per 100K. So per capita, black men have twice the rate, even though hold on, my bad. The damn thing is blocking that. Even though white men did it more in raw numbers. So why is this sometimes dishonest? It ignores their total impact. If you live in a majority white nation and white men commit the most crimes, then they create the majority of the victims and the social impact, not black men regardless of race. A community cares about the volume of crime, not just the rate per capita. So this is why reading comprehension is very important and knowing what the meaning of words mean. So you don't allow people to get away with things. Now, does that take away accountability from black community to clean up our house? No, it doesn't. Right? Because at the end of the day, our statistic matches our group population. So if out of the 40 million, you have 4,000, what was it? Hold on, let me go back. So if out of the 40 million, you have 4,000 grade case arrest, 10K per 100K of that 40 million, that's not good, black people. That is not good. But that doesn't take away the fact that white people, since you're the majority of the nation, you're committing the most crimes. So you can't say by rate, because now, regardless of the rates, you're still the majority group. You're committing the most of the crimes. Right? It get weaponized in debates. White nationalists or dishonest commentators use per capita to argue black men are more dangerous while ignoring context. Economic sabotage, over policing, the judicial biases, employment discrimination, poverty correlations. Right now, with the economic sabotage, judicial bias, employment discrimination, these things are going to be hard for you to prove, right? Because it's always hidden behind, especially with economic sabotage and judicial bias and employment discrimination. Because when you go into the hiring process, right, the questions are posed as being neutral, but it's meant to extract information from you, to watch body language, to watch how you speak, to watch tones, right? The person is not honestly looking, who's asking you those interview questions, they're not honestly looking for things that could say, okay, this is a good fit, okay, this is a bad fit. They're looking for ways to disqualify you from the job, from the hiring process. So they already don't like you from you hit the table, or we're already planning on not hiring you before you hit that interview table. And I experienced that, right? I had a chick when I went on the interview, and this is I'm gonna be honest, this is a black chick. I ain't gonna lie to you, right? And so a lot of black women they can't make the claim that they don't get hired, because they do get hired, right? A lot of times they're gatekeepers, but you can't prove that either, right? But she was asking the same neutral questions, same probing questions, but she was asking them robotic. You see what I'm saying? And I could tell the difference between when I'm sitting before somebody and their body language, their tone, are interested in getting to know who I am when they're asking the questions. I can tell the difference between that. Many of you that have been through the interview process, you can tell the difference too, right? Especially this question when they ask, "Do you have any questions for me?" Now, logically, why would an interviewer ask you, "Do you have any questions for me?" That's a way to see if you're intrigued about the job position. That's to see if you're like if you're actually interested in being there or excited to be there. Now, if you say no, I don't have any questions for you, that's an automatically disqualification. You could have did everything right on an interview and still get disqualified because you didn't answer that question. I didn't know that. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of these questions in the interviewing process is meant to disqualify you. It is posed as being neutral, but you still can't prove if that was racist or not. Like somebody or whistleblower, or you'd have to notice the patterns would have to come out and say, okay, this is going on. Right? When you say over policing, right? If there's crime going on in another community, but you're not policing that community as heavily as you're policing my community over here, right? And we're both doing the same type of crimes. Who's going to get more caught the most? Right? Because you're over policing me more than you're over policing them. So of course you're going to catch more people in my community doing crimes because you're doing an over policing of our community, of mine. You're not bringing the same energy of how you police my community to somebody's community over there. You know what I'm saying? So that's what happened to a lot of black people during the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. Over policing. And then, like I said, talked about with the Innocence Project, overturning a lot of cases or criminal cases that come to find out these things weren't true. Right? In dating, per capita arguments are ridiculous. Example, black men date outside their race more per capita. This is something being said about black women and black men who pander like Dr. Umar Johnson to black women and white dudes, right? Why this fails? Dating isn't a crime or public harm. Dating requires two willing participants. Per capita ignores social dynamics, desirability biases, and opportunity access. If 5% of the white women date black men, but black population is only 13%, the per capita will always make black men look overrepresented in interracial relationships, even though the choices was mutual. Remember, black men cannot date white women unless white women also want to date black men. And then 5% of, I forgot how many million white women is, but it's a bigger group than black men. I think black men are like 6 million in the population. I think white women are like, hold on, we're gonna look this up. Hold on. We're gonna look this up. White American female population. This up. Hold on. It's giving me in percentage. It doesn't show me in raw numbers. Hold on. Go to ChatGPT right quick. What is the raw numbers of white American females in raw when it comes to the population? Let's look at this. Remove. Let me add. Hold on. Where is this? Remove this. No. Or move that. Let me share screen. Let me share screen. Here it is. So this is ChatGPT. Let me see. Let me go here. What is the damn thing at? Oh, here, all right, here it is. So look at this. This is 100 million white alone females, non-Hispanic white females, right? Roughly almost 200 million white million people, right? So 96.8 million non-Hispanic white females. See what I'm saying? So 5%. So let me ask ChatGPT, what's 5% of the total white American females? What's 5% of that? $5 million. So they doing 0.05 times that. 5 million. 5% of 5 million, right? Okay. And then when I showed y'all what I showed you earlier, where is it again? Put this back on stage. When I showed you this, it says 30 black population is only 13% of the per capita. So let me ask ChatGPT that. Hold on, move that. Go back to ChatGPT. What is the black male population? Or how many is the black male population? You see when it said that, it pulled it from sources, right? There are estimated 19.5 million black men in the United States. That compromises about 48% of the total black population, with black women making up 52%, right? So 19.5 million. And let me see that. Let me see this over here again. If 5% of white women date black men, but the population only 13%, right? Should go back up here. My fault. So now, when you're going up here now and you see that 13%, 13%, this is dating that. Or this group, right, is dating this. Now, mind you, this and that is coming from this. This 250K is coming from this. This is dating this down here. So, of course, per capita, it's going to be higher. Right? But hold on now. If that's the case, then per capita, women dating black men outside their race would be at a higher per capita rate, right? By that logic. Because if the black men are the bigger group and white women who date black men in this context are the smaller group, then per capita, white women would, remember, reading comprehension, per capita, white women would be dating black men at a higher rate than white women, than black women would be dating white men, by that logic. I hope I got that right. I hope I got that line of reasoning right. Hold on. Let me refix that, right? If the logic is right, that black men are dating white women at a higher rate per capita, right? Even though white women, only 5% of them are doing that, and I just showed you the map between that. A smaller group of white women are dating black men. Then that would be flipped. Then higher than per capita, white women are dating outside their race at a higher rate than black women are dating white men. Because remember, they're speaking from the position of who black men are dating. They're not speaking from the position of who white women are dating, choosing to date. Remember, dating takes two people to choose each other to date. That's interesting. So maybe we should be looking at white women while they're dating at a higher rate per capita, but we're not going to go through that. And that's what makes per capita rates intellectually dishonest. Because now if you flip the logic on that, it would point the finger at white women dating per capita rate at a higher rate than black women are dating. But we're not going to go into that, right? This is what I mean about these spaces with certain discussions and arguments that are intellectually dishonest, because they're using words like per capita and they're not going through the raw data, right? Because even if you were to go with this, right, the main argument, which is that black women are dating outside their race, remember, I showed you the raw numbers. White women are a bigger group. Hold on. Show y'all again. Let me show that to y'all again. Remember, add that to stage. That, add this to stage. Remember, this is a bigger group than the 19.5 million. So raw numbers, this, if you look at it from the black male's position, black men, so hold on, let me ask ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, from the black man's position, per capita wise, right? Would he be dating white women at a higher rate in reference to the numbers that you presented me here when it comes to the interracial relationships? I want to create the math sequence. Black men, white women. 24% of the 19.5 million is 4.68 million black men in interracial marriages. If 60 to 70% of those are white women, 2.8 to 3.3 million black men married to white women. See that? So out of the 19.5 black men, around 14 to 7% are married to white women. White women to black men. 100, so this is 100 million basically, white women. About 4 to 5% of white women are in interrelationships. Interracial marriages are with black men. 4 to 5% of the 100 million equal 4.1 to 5.1 million white women. But this number includes all forms of interracial relationships, not just those with black men. Hold on. Read that again. This, all right? But this number includes all forms of interracial relationships, not just with black men. However, actual white women, black men marriages are estimated to be about 1 to 1.5 million max. So what does that mean? Per capita, black men date and marry women at a higher rate than white women marry black men because black men are a much smaller population, which I already said that, versus the 100.4 million white women. A higher percentage of black men date marry white women than the reverse, right? Because white women are a bigger group. Real world translation. While the absolute number of interracial marriages might seem balanced or skewed in favor of white women due to raw numbers, per black men, he is disproportionately more likely to be in a relationship with white women than the average white woman is to be in one with a black man. Because white women outnumber black men. So this is why per capita argument is stupid. This is why when Dr. Umar Johnson says per capita, and he knows that's bullshit. You know how I know Dr. Umar Johnson knows it's bullshit? Because if you said the same per capita argument when it came to race, when it comes to criminal activity, he would say that's bullshit. He would use what I'm using. Let's go back. All right. A white person in a wealthy suburb can have more access to legal counsel, less likelihood of arrest or prosecution, more protection from the system. So even if crimes are committed at the same or worse rate, white offenders may simply not show up in the data the same way. This skews per capita arguments even more. What does that mean? Well, white people have ways of not getting caught by the system because they have more capital and money. Black folks, well, we broke. And really and truly, black men, if that's the case, we need to step our money up, get our money game up there. You know what I'm saying? Maybe we need to create a suburban, wealthy place. You know what I'm saying? Using per capita to compare black versus white behavior without including systematic context is like comparing how fast two runners are while one has cement block side to his legs. Like, black folks literally had a cement block side to his legs, especially when it comes to black men. And the historical facts are there. It's not like you can't go back in time and not see it. You know what I'm saying? You can see it. Raw numbers versus per capita. Raw numbers equal the actual total number of occurrences of something. No math, no scaling, the straight up totals. All right. Group, white, 200 million. Number of robberies, 50,000. Black, 40 million. Number of robberies, 55,000. Right. So you would say that 15,000 is almost half of 40 million, and 50,000 is like maybe 3/4 of this. No, not even 3/4. That's 50,000 of robberies of the 200 million versus 15,000 robberies of the 40 million. You know what I'm saying? And this is across population. This is to the population in general, right? So now if you add 200 million plus 40 million, right? 50,000 robberies of the 240 million of combined groups versus the 15,000 robberies of the combined group population. Who's still going to commit the most robberies? White people. All right. Raw numbers of robberies by whites equal 50,000. So in this case, white Americans commit more robberies in total, raw numbers. Per capita adjust the numbers by population size to create a rate, right? Using the same robbery example, white, this would equal 25 per 100K. 15, this would equal 37.5 per 100K. Now the arguments flip. Black Americans have higher rate even though they commit fewer robberies. So this is why reading comprehension is important, and knowing mathematics is important, right? Because you have to say rate versus the total raw numbers. Impact on society happens in totals, not rates. Remember this. Impact on society happens in totals, not rates. Your community doesn't feel per capita, it feels the total damage. If 50 robberies were done by whites and 15,000 by blacks, then white Americans create more total victims and more police action, period. So white people, you like, yeah, I gotta hold yourself accountable to something. Instead of walking around blaming black men for everything. White Americans are the majority. When the raw numbers are higher, it means the majority group is driving the actual culture. Even if a minority group has a higher rate, it doesn't mean they're responsible for the majority of a societal dysfunction. White people. Now, does that mean that black folks shouldn't hold themselves accountable? No, they should. But white people, you have a lot of accountability on your end. Per capita assumes everyone is on equal ground. That's false. White offenders have more access to lawyers, bail, and lenient sentences. They're less likely to be over-policed or wrongly charged. Many crimes are underreported or misclassified in white communities. Per capita doesn't account for that. Raw numbers at least show what actually happens, right? So it's saying that per capita doesn't account for like these little small nuances right here. Raw numbers show the real world effect, how many crimes were actually committed and who's creating the most social damage. Per capita is useful for control studies, but it gets dishonest when people use it to shame smaller populations or shift blame without looking at a structural cause. White folks still commit more in total, and that means they hold more responsibility overall, especially as a majority group. All right? So we're going to cut from that. So, like, again, I'm not taking away from the fact that black folks need to step our game up, but to the white people and the white conservatives and those of you that come on these YouTube platforms that's always critiquing what black men are doing and always blaming us for shit that's going on in society, you need to blame yourselves for that. Black men didn't create welfare states. We didn't create none of these programs that the white dominant society created, or you're allowed to be created. All right. This one is very important right here. Oftentimes in these YouTube spaces, every time you critique white men about something they did, they always do this here. This word right here. This 3-letter word right here. They always blame this group of people right here. Let me show you. On a claim that the small hats run the porn industry, it is true that some early porn industry pioneers and producers were Jewish Americans. Figures like Ruben Sturman played a role in adult entertainment. Who was that? I forgot what was his name. I forgot his porn name, right? And entertainment distribution. However, the porn industry is predominantly composed of a wide variety of players, including many non-Jewish white Americans, producers, performers, and executives. To say Jews run the porn industry is a sweeping generalization and plays into harmful stereotypes that have historically been used to scapegoat Jewish people. I'm pretty sure that a lot of those porn productions are not Jewish owned or ran. I'm pretty sure Bazaar's Network and Reality Porn and all those other different production companies are white American ran. You mean tell me Ghetto Gaggers is Jewish American? Feminism and Jewish involvement. Gloria Steinem, a prominent feminist, is indeed Jewish. But feminism is a movement, as a movement, has included many women from diverse ethnic, religious backgrounds. Susan B. Anthony, a key figure in women's suffrage, was not Jewish. The women's suffrage movement included many non-Jewish white women. Feminism origins and development are broad and not controlled by any single ethnic or religious group. So you can't blame feminism on Jewish women or the Jewish people. Redlining and discriminatory laws. Redlining was a practice supported and enforced mainly by local and federal government agencies. Real estate industries and banks dominated largely by white Americans, many of whom were Christian. Jewish communities, like other minorities, often faced discrimination and barriers to political or economic power during much of the 20th century. In fact, Jewish communities themselves were often excluded from certain neighborhoods, clubs, and institutions due to discriminatory policies. So, you know how that lie that white people men like to say you can't tell the difference, and how Jewish people were able to camouflage themselves and hide themselves amongst them? How are you able to create redlining policies and block certain Jewish people out of certain things in clubs if you couldn't tell the difference? You have to be able to tell the difference between who they are from you, even though they share the same white complexion and white skin. You have to know the difference. Jewish population as a small percent is a small percentage of America. Jewish Americans constitute a roughly 2% of the U.S. population. Given the small proportion, it would be inaccurate to place systematic societal problems or broad political power in the hands of the Jewish community alone. Most historical or systematic policies such as segregation, redlining, political leadership, and corporate control were shaped by the white majority, not by a small minority group. So, white people, you can't keep saying that 2% of the population was able to push you around and bully you and dictate to you how to run your own shit if you're the majority. So how did you let this 2% push y'all around? Summary of the overall point. When people deflect criticism of white men by blaming Jewish people, it's often scapegoating tactic that ignores broader structural realities. The majority of white population who held political, economic, and cultural power bear primary responsibility for systematic issues like racism. Well, not patriarchy. Patriarchy is cool. An institutional corporation. Jewish Americans, like other minority groups, have often faced their own struggles for equality and inclusion. All right. Restrictive housing and neighborhood covenants. Restrictive covenants were legal agreements embedded in property deeds that prohibited selling or renting to certain ethnic or religious groups, including Jews. These covenants were widespread in many American cities from the 1920s through the 1940s. Though these were often framed around race, religion was also a factor, and many neighborhoods explicitly barred Jewish families. These were legally enforceable until the Supreme Court banned them in Shelley versus Kramer. I'm not going to go through the rest of this, but white people, you can't keep blaming the Jews when you had your foot on their neck. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what I mean by when I say, white people keep blaming Jewish people for, what's been going on in America. When you've been racist towards them too, just as well, not as much as you've been racist towards blacks, but you were racist towards them too. You prevented them from getting to certain things and access to certain things. Which brings me to the next thing. Is this it? No, it's not it. My fault. No, it's not it. No, that's not it yet. Is this it? Is this it right here? No, that's not it. I had something in here. Give me 1 second. This. Okay, so that's it. Right here. How white men have shown more humanity to other groups before black people. Main one, anti-Asian hate crime law versus black Pacific legislation. Fact, COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act, passed in 2021, specifically addressed rising hate crimes against Asians during the pandemic. It was passed swiftly with bipartisan support and signed by Joe Biden. Remember, this is the same person that called black people a super predator, right? And I'm going to show you the quote. It created a position in DOJ to review hate crimes. It gave funding and training to local law enforcement. It even improved data collection and reporting on hate crimes. Remember, this is specific to Asians. Black Americans have never received a similar Pacific federal law addressing hate crimes with systematic mistreatment, not even after slavery, Jim Crow, COINTELPRO, the crack era, mass incarceration. Well, yeah, George Floyd's dead, right? There are general civil rights protections, yes, but nothing exclusive in modern times that names black people, especially black men, as a protected class. Even lynching wasn't made a federal crime until 2022, after 100 years of attempts. Remember, this was swift in 2020. In 2021, bro. So now when you talk about the civil rights platform, right? That civil rights platform was designed to benefit general minority groups. It wasn't specific for black people. When you say meant to protect colored people, colored can mean black, white, blue, green, or yellow. When it says minority groups, there's white woman is a minority group, black woman is a minority group, gay people are a minority group, many different minority groups. So there's a lot of language coded in that civil rights platform that doesn't benefit specifically black people. It could benefit everybody. It could benefit a broader. It could benefit a broader groups. This is why many times when it comes to black people, with the civil rights movement, you could skip over black people or benefit everybody else but black people with that movement. This is how a lot of LGBT and other groups are able to hijack it, because the language in the civil rights movement or in those civil rights protection clauses protects those other groups that hijacked it. And you can exclude black people from getting whatever protection is for it or under it, right? Joe Biden and the 1994 crime bill. Joe Biden was a key architect of the 1994 Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, aka the crime bill. It expanded prisons, encouraged tougher sentencing, and funded 100,000 new police officers. It was heavily supported by white Democrats and Republicans alike. Democrats and Republicans alike. And yes, many black leaders at the time too, who felt desperate about the violence, but Biden's tone was aggressively punitive. So the Black Caucus, a lot of y'all are responsible too. All right. Quote from the Biden 1993. It doesn't matter if they are victims of a society. I don't care. We have to take them off the streets. This is what quote from Biden said, remember? Many believe this devastated black families by disproportionately locking up black men, especially with mandatory minimums for non-violent drug offenses. Non-violent drug offenses. Non-violent drug offenses. So you had niggas that would steal, I guess, a candy bar or do something non-violent and get life sentences. This is under Joe Biden's crime bill. This went on from what, 1994 up until his presidency. And he passed an anti-Asian hate bill, but he didn't pass a bill to rectify what he passed in 1994. It's ridiculous. Donald Trump did something. Donald Trump made a First Step Act that freed a lot of black men from prison that was put there because of the 1994 bill. While other groups get more respect or compensation, Asian Americans were acknowledged quickly during COVID because they are often seen as a model minority. They have strong business lobbying power. The violence was visible, recent, and tied to Trump era rhetoric. China virus shit. So they blame Trump. Trump was wild boy. Jewish Americans received strong national attention after anti-Semitic attacks. Hispanic Latino immigrants, even if undocumented, have some institutional advocacy because of growing voter violence. Catholic I can't say some of these words. And this is why I have to make these slides, because I can spell the words, I know what they mean, but my speech cannot communicate them properly, right? Black Americans, despite building the country, lack the same unified economic or lobbying power, partly due to systematic fragmentation, lack of reparations, and continued internal division. And truthfully, racism against Black men in particular is so deeply ingrained, and even the good ones are viewed as threatening or undeserving. Right? You have a lot of good Black brothers that are now Black people. This is where I hold you accountable for certain things. Right? When you tell Black people to unify, because they have I think a $1 billion buying power. So Black people, y'all could perfectly unify and create some kind of lobbying to lobby the government to get certain things passed. But Black people, you don't know how to play the game. You don't know how to have certain segment of Black people vote Democrat or be neutral and say, look, Republicans, if you want our vote, pass this. Democrats, if you want our vote, pass this, or play both sides of the game. You feel me? And get what you can get out of the system. But then again, white people, especially on the Republican side and conservative side, you did not make or try to get Black men to be part of the American capitalist space. You allowed a lot of shit to happen to them. You didn't protect them under the same constitutional law. So you have a lot of scars and wounds that you helped to create into the Black community. And it's pushed them to socialism. It's pushed them to Marxist ideas and communist ideas. So you still got to take responsibility for that. But in the meantime, in between time, Black people, that still doesn't mean that you have a right to cut up or be debauchery or participate in the debauchery. You feel me? Even the righteous get treated the same. This is a structural anti-Blackness, not just based on behavior. When Black men wear suits, speaks well, follows the law, and builds something respectable, he still gets profiled, dismissed, or condescending to. Meanwhile, white men or other groups are allowed more complexity. They can be poor, eccentric, even criminal, and still seen as individuals. Meaning, Black men still don't get seen as a human being by society, not even from his own peers. Right? We're not allowed to come on here and show emotions. We're not allowed to be a victim, right? You know, when we speak about certain things, even when you go into corporate America, we still look as a threat. You could be I've seen Black men in corporate America be as step and fetch it, as tamed. I hate that word tamed, right? As possible, and still looked at as, a threat. No matter how well dressed he is. So when you don't give Black men respect for abiding by the laws of society, of course he's going to rebel that. Why would he still want to participate into something that when he does participate into it and he's being successful to it and he's adapting to it, you still criminalize him? This is the problem with racism. Racism is not something that Black people created. You know what I'm saying? So for the future references, anybody in future society that's going to watch this video, this is why racism is dangerous. They created a racial caste system. They keep institutions like media, academia, law enforcement, and finance. They failed to repair the damage they caused economically and culturally and legally. And now many deflect blame or claim victimhood, anti-white discrimination, instead of taking generational accountability. Now, Black people, you have to create your own stuff. 2025 is the perfect time for you to do it. And I think the reason why the white people on the left are keeping you in the victimhood is because the victimhood is like a blindfold over your eyes to prevent you from getting the things that are in the environment for you to succeed and create your own stuff. All right. And when I say many deflect blame or claim victimhood, white people, and I don't believe that white people should take accountability because I'm going to be intellectually honest. There are a lot of white people today that are rectifying what their forebears have done in the past. This is why you have something like the Innocence Project. The Innocence Project is a group of white people that's helping to overturn or free a lot of black men from prison. So, black people, we have to be intellectually honest about the white people in the system that has held black folks. You see what I'm saying? You got to be honest about that. When I'm speaking to white people as a whole. I'm not speaking to the, individual white people, which, to be honest, I guarantee there's a lot of those individual white people that are not racist towards black people. You know what I'm saying? Treat you good and treat you with a lot of respect, right? So shout out to those people, right? But really and truly, who needs to repair that damage? The Democratic left and the right. The right has to repair that damage because they allowed the left to do it. A lot of black leaders in our communities who led us to the left, they also have to pay for that. You know what I'm saying? Let's continue. Why this racism stays hidden? Because it's encoded in policy, coded language, and corporate discretion. A company won't say we don't hire black. So this is what I was talking about earlier. We don't hire black men. Instead of say you're not a cultural fit. We're going in a different direction. We had a strong pool of candidates. No whistleblower, no smoking gun, just pattern after pattern after pattern. That's why data audits and lawsuits are often the only way to prove it. And most black men don't have the power or resources to wage those fights. All right. So black men, this is why a lot of times we lose because we don't have the economic strength or power base. We're not unified. You know what I'm saying? We don't like to vote. I voted in New York, and unfortunately, somebody who I didn't vote for got elected, and he's going to propose the same bullshit that hasn't been working. But we don't vote as a collective. Black men, we don't unify with each other as a collective. You know what I'm saying? We don't look to each other for masculine leadership or patriarchal leadership. Every nigga want to be the top nigga. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be the top nigga when it comes to being niggas. Because being the top nigga of niggas get you killed and get you up out of here. And then I had to snap into to something very demonic in order to for people to fear me. That's the only way you're gonna rule over niggas. You have to be a demon on top of demon with a little bit of righteousness in it. So you can't be a full-on righteous dude, good dude. You have to be righteous and have some demonic energy in you. So anytime niggas don't want to flip up or step to you, got to be on demon time with them. That's how you got to be on the top, be the top nigga. And I don't want that position. I would rather shine with niggas than overshine niggas. Because there's enough food for us all to get and eat. You know what I'm saying? Last thing I'm going to put up here. How white America could have turned blacks into allies and instead of enemies. Never put too much. This is a quote from the 48 Laws of Power. I think this is rule 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. Some friends can betray you due to emotions or jealousy. Enemies, once won over, can be more loyal and useful. Example, Abraham Lincoln appointed former rivals to his cabinet, the team of rivals, turning competition into cooperation. I believe in the 48 Laws of Power, that rule too, it talks about how, I guess, a Chinese dynasty, like they always had a cycle of war and violence, right? And what the emperor of that time did was that he won over the people he had issues with as allies. He gave them positions, and because of that, they respected it from that. And I think they had thousands of years of peace in China, right? And white people could have did this with black people, right? I'm gonna show you how. White men built the system, let it rot, and now complain about wreckage, while black men are getting blamed for surviving the storm and trying to build something from scratch. That's basically what black men are doing. Black men are dealing with the shit that rolled downhill. And all black men are trying to do is adjust to the ever changing environment that for a lot of times we're not in control of. You know what I'm saying? White manosphere created a space but didn't include black men until they had to. That white manosphere pre 2015 was dominated by PUAs, MRAs, men's rights activists, MGTOW, trad right? These were mostly white men complaining about divorce courts, feminism, and dating, but with almost zero racial awareness and very little interest in black men's unique social challenges, right? Now, pickup artists, they the ones that created the hookup culture. You know what I'm saying? The fact that you have pickup artists in the manosphere complaining about divorce and feminism, because a lot of them niggas was lying to bitches, a lot of them niggas was contributing to the hookup culture and whole phrases and shit. So, you know what I'm saying? The fact that you got pickup artists over there is wild, right? When black men entered the space, especially, well, Tommy Sotomayor, he's not manosphere, but a lot of the black manosphere, or a lot of manosphere cats, even the white ones, a lot of them get their talking points from Tommy Sotomayor, right? Really and truly, Obsidian, Angry Man, O'Shea Duke, I think those are the 2, 3 that created the manosphere, right? Then Kevin Samuels, Kevin Samuels, he was the, I want to say he was the culmination of the Angermans, the Obsidians, and the Tommy Sotomayor, and the brothers that was in the Black Manosphere, right? He took everything that was in the Black Manosphere and he put it together, and he became that, right? Cultural flavor, urban realism, real gain from hard-earned experience in anti-male, anti-black environments. Accountability narratives women couldn't finesse, right? So you have to give Tommy Sotomayor, Angry Man, Obsidian, and Kevin Samuels, and Mr. Fantastic, and a lot of those brothers that came from there, because the Black Manosphere is what really put the Manosphere in general on notice. Like, you don't have an Angry Man version in the White Manosphere. You don't have an Obsidian version. You don't even have a Tommy Sotomayor or Kevin Samuels of the White Manosphere, right? You don't have that same energy over there. But in the Black Manosphere, that's where you get the real game from. You know what I'm saying? Now, here's the thing. White Manosphere cats didn't respect it until the numbers showed they had to. Remember the hoodlum analogy I used earlier? Bumpy Johnson and Dust Schultz is on point. They ignored Bumpy when he was getting bread on the side. Only when he had leverage, they invited him to sit. But, right? They didn't invite Bumpy Johnson in the movie Hoodlum to the table until they found out he had the energy. He had the juice. So they had no other option but to say, come to the table. You know what I'm saying? But they still didn't let him lead. Ironically, they still not let Bumpy, like I said, him to lead at the table. They allowed him to sit at the table. Right? Which is what a lot of the manosphere, I guess the white manosphere is doing. They only allow niggas to sit at the table when they want to make a mockery of the niggas, in my opinion. Right? This is why they use Pookie and Ray Ray and shit. You never hear them say Billy Bob, Trailer Trash. You never hear them say smash him, bang him down, Timmy. Right? It's always Pookie and Ray Ray. Whenever they want to talk about somebody cheating on with a broke dude or a bum, like if it's a white chick cheating on a broke dude or a bum, they never say Trailer Trash Timmy. They never say dick him down Billy Bob. They never say Brad Dickums. They just say Pookie and Ray Ray. You know what I'm saying? Feminism, white women mad at white husbands, not black men. No fault divorce. White men passed that law, no fault divorce. Porn industry, white men funded and dominated it. OnlyFans era, white women are the top earners. It's white men paying for white that made the white women top earners. Degenerative hookup culture. White led PUAs taught it, sold it, and branded it. So you white men in the manosphere complain about the body counts. Y'all created that. Then those same white dudes, many in the manosphere, engage in the same debauchery they claim to hate. How you running against your force while promoting pickup artistry, open relationships, and casual sex? Bro, black men are catching the breeze from a house we didn't build. Black men didn't design the welfare system or any of these things, right? I think I already run through that. Something else. Mostly white led and help fuel hookup culture. Neil Strauss, Mystery Method, Roach V, RSD. Like these are pickup artist dudes, right? Promoted deception, treated women as NPCs, and made sex a numbers game, right? These same guys mock traditional family men, right? So you hear them always saying, um, trying to think, right? I'm trying to think of some of the things that I've heard them say. Because like if you hear them talk, a lot of them said a lot of shit against traditional dudes. Like when they shame dudes out of not getting married, when they talk about how they fuck somebody's wife, right? A lot of white dudes be saying that shit too. And now, right? So now and then, like it says here, disrespected cultural morality. A lot of these things is coming from these white dudes, from the white manosphere that they were part of. So they broke the shit. This is not black men breaking white society. This is them breaking it. Like, and I can remember, but I was younger at the time. You used to see a lot of these guys go on a lot of talk shows and talk about these things. Huh? Using the Christian, now see, this is white Christians to justify slavery and segregation. This is historically accurate. Many white Christian slaveholders and segregationists use biblical texts to justify slavery and racism. All right. And this is something this is what a lot of the laws passed during Jim Crow was based upon their interpretation of what the Bible was, right? Now remember, Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma, known as Black Wall Street, was destroyed at this time, right? This was not due to any wrongdoing by black residents, but because white mobs often, with the complicity or inaction of local law enforcement, attacked a prosperous black community. Similar violent destruction happened to other all black towns and communities which thrived economically but were targets of white hostility and sabotage. So, like, if white people had never done this, like these were wounds curated by white people. If you had allowed black folks to have their own capital in here, respect their humanity, protect them under the law of the Constitution, you wouldn't have the issues you have now, right? White resistance to black autonomy and economic independence. Instead of allowing black Americans to build and sustain their own wealth and communities, many white Americans actively sought to block this through violence, legislation, and economic sabotage. This included redlining and denial of loans to black entrepreneurs and homeowners. If this didn't happen and you respected and you allow them to be entrepreneurs and build an economic base, do you know the power that America would have today? And no Marxism or communists would be able to use black folks as a weapon against America. I don't think there'd be any such thing as a Black Panther Party if black folks was allowed to participate in capitalism, right? Sundown towns where black people were not allowed after dark, crazy. Poll taxes, literacy tests, and other voter suppression tactics, right? Similar to the shit they're doing today. With that was this was done during this was not done towards a specific race, but it was done. It was done. I want to say to everybody, right? You even had dumbass black people participating in this. So black Americans that were trying to suppress voters during the elections, why would you do something that was done to you? These actions prevented black Americans from fully participating in capitalism and wealth building. Right? This is what I mean by when I say what you should have made black people an ally. You just made them more of an enemy. Capitalism, Marxism, and the black community. I'll make a strong point. If black Americans had equal access to capital, education, and economic opportunity, it would be much harder for Marxist or victimhood ideologies to take hold in the community. Historically, capitalist exclusion and systematic racism created economic vulnerability that Marxists and left-wing organizers exploited. The failure of white conservatives and capitalists to integrate black Americans into the economy as equals has had lasting effects. In other words, economic justice and genuine inclusion could act as a bulwark against victimhood narratives and class-based radicalism, right? So you would have had the Black Panther Party that was pushing socialism. Martin Luther King Jr. with his communist undertones wouldn't have been there. You know what I'm saying? None of these things that happened to black culture to push them towards Marxism and victimhood would not be there if black folks was afforded a fair shot at capitalism and protected under the law of the Constitution. Right? For black Americans, despite their sacrifices in the wars and contributions to society is fully justified. Black veterans face segregation, discrimination, and violence after returning from wars. World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, despite risking their lives for the country. Even during the racism, black men still said, no, we're going to fight for America because this is our home. And come back home to, and I believe Bill Clinton, he apologized for the Tuskegee Airmen when they were giving syphilis to black men. Go look that up, right? Like white America, you have a lot of explaining to do. And I think that's never going to happen for black people. So I think the solution to that black people is you have to create a power base with yourself. I think the best solution to this is now not to let this go, but to put it on the shelf. But meanwhile, this is put on the shelf. You make sure that your communities are morally upstanding. You make sure that your economic base is big and you are unified under capitalism and under a constitutional republic. Not Marxism, not communism, not none of that shit. Capitalism, constitutional republic. And create a base off of traditional values. But put this shit on the shelf. Don't forget it, but put it on the shelf and build your power in the meantime, which you should have been doing. And you could definitely do it now in 2025. The misuse of religion to justify racism, the violent suppression of black economics independence, the failure of white conservative capitalism to generally include black Americans, and those failures left openings for Marxists and other ideologies to gain influence, right? This is why people like, what's his name? He's a black Republican, he's a conservative. I forgot his name. But anyway, this is why a lot of black conservatives are looked at as coons or sellouts, because Black people look at them as siding with capitalism, and they look at conservative black white people as racist. So capitalism and white people are, in the perception of black people, are synonymous to each other. So anytime you're a black person, you're a conservative or you're a Republican, you talk like me, or they were coons, lames, and sellouts. You know what I'm saying? And that's because of the racism that was done by that group, by that side of the fence. Capitalism and conservatives are not the problem. People are. Capitalism is an economic system based on private property, voluntary exchange, and market-driven growth. In theory, it's colorblind. Anyone can participate, compete, and thrive. Conservatism is its truest form emphasizes moral order, tradition, limited government, personal responsibility. Right. So these things are not racism. Right. It's the people within in these things that make it racist, or make it seem racist. See, if the people that are engaging in these things, like white people, made it fair and righteous for black people to compete into it, you wouldn't have this problem with today. They would have been a big ally to you. All right. I think I went through this. So this is me being intellectually honest. Yes, systems and structures were created and maintained mostly by white men, so general critique is valid. While many individual white men did support black freedoms, abolitionists, civil rights allies, soldiers, clergy, the majority did not fight the status quo, and many actively upheld it. Right. So yeah, I'm going to acknowledge the white men in history that have fought and put their lives on the line for black people. Right. Because they looked into the humanity of black people. But at the same time, as a whole system, majority of white people did not still oppose the status quo. This is why you have white people in the South that will call another white person a nigger lover because he is siding with a black person. Which is funny to black people is that the same people that would call another white person a nigger lover is on your Democratic left. They just repackage themselves and sound different. Oh, I don't know if I went through this. Racism often hides behind facially neutral behavior. It's known as legal and academic term as covert discrimination and or disparate impact. Interview questions might seem neutral. Are you culturally fit? Yeah, I think I went through that. Policies, certain grooming standards, criminal background checks, credit scores may appear race neutral, but disproportionately affect black candidates, particularly black men, due to historical inequities. Unless there's a whistleblower, pattern of evidence, or statistical disparities, it's nearly impossible to prove. All right. And the equal employment opportunity does back it. And there's case law behind it. But again, it's like it's difficult to prove still. Right? Now, the Pookie and Rere argument. In black communities, Pookie and Rere are stereotypical names used to describe deadbeat dads, thugs, men stuck in a street lifestyle. They're culturally shorthand, pointing to someone who lacks ambition, responsibility, or moral discretion, a bum. White figures criticize Pookies and Reres to talk about black men dating white women. Notice what doesn't happen. They never invent a white equivalent. Chad the Zero, Todd who lives in mom's basement. They never ask, because remember, Todd and mom in living in mom's basement will fuck a rich white man in the suburbs' wife. Chad the Zero will fuck a white woman that's the wife of a CEO of a company. That's what's funny to me. A white woman will go to a Girls Gone Wild event because let's be honest, right? White people have a Girls Gone the white people equivalent to a Freaknik is a Girls Gone Wild, and you'll have white women that will go to these events like a Girls Gone Wild event where they taking off their titties, stripping naked and fucking a Todd, the Todd who lives in mom's basement type of dude, or Chad the Zero, or Timmy the Dick 'em down, Timmy Dick 'em down. You know what I'm saying? Dick 'em down, Timmy. But they never use those type. They never use Timmy. They never use Chad. They don't talk about Todd. They stay saying Pookie and Ray Ray. All right. They never ask for nomenclature. When a white man acts like a bum, only black men are labeled Pookie and Ray Ray. This is a racial double standard in objective cultural commentary. You know what I'm saying? Whew. I did a lot of talking. But anyway, white men, as I broke down today, you have failed American society and you have caused the chaos that y'all are complaining about. But every time I see you in these Twitter spaces, on these YouTube platforms, you stay blaming black men and you stay blaming the Jewish people and you blame everybody else. You don't blame yourself, right? You guys had with the PUA niggas, you created the pickup artist shit. You created the hookup culture and sex culture. Y'all was the one lying to white women and these things. That wasn't black men. And I showed you that black men in the raw numbers are not dating white women at a high rate, rate like that. White women is typically going to be going into a relationship with a white dude. And it's your problems just roll downhill to us. You know what I'm saying? And then white women will see something going on with white men and put us into the same bracket as them. So white dudes, like, you're the one causing your own problems. You know what I'm saying? And I think for black people, particularly in black men, and I think black men, I think we understand that. I think us as black men, especially the older gentlemen, I think we understand that we're not going to get a formal apology from white people or white men. I think we understand that we're not going to get acknowledgement of it. Our humanity is not going to get acknowledged. So, the solution for us moving forward from 2025 and up is to run the bag up. Shout out to Anton Daniels. I think the solution for us is to, especially now in 2025, like the shit I talked about, the things of the past, right? I'm just pointing out I'm pointing out the history that created the problems we see today, right? Black men, moving forward, we have to step our game up, right? And we got to create a base. And we have, like I said earlier, we have to get demonic with the shit, right? We have to kick people out of our circle or square or table that don't align to where we want to go. But first, we have to figure out where we want to go. What's going to be the codes we stand on? What's going to be the value system we have? You know what I'm saying? And we still got to respect each brother as an individual and as a human at the same time. You know what I'm saying? But no, back to white men, you're like, before y'all can critique us, you got to critique yourself. All right? Black people, we got our problems too. And I think before we can critique white people, we got to critique ourselves too. But the thing is that I hear white men get up here and complain every day. I hear them get up and use black men to validate their arguments with crime and statistics. And, bro, it's not us causing your problems. You know what I'm saying? We're a minority group. You know what I'm saying? We shouldn't be that much more influential than you, the majority group that has the power. All that shit you see going on in the LA riots, white men, you have the power to squash that. You feel me? But anyway, this is Kiss Shorty Gaming Nation. Thanks to those of you that came in and watched and sat and listened to me talk and had the patience. Kiss Shorty Gaming Nation. Like, share, subscribe. I'm out.